is the story of Phineas Fogg, a most amazing man. It is also the story of Passepartout, who is probably the most unusual butler in the world. One day, at his very fancy club in Pall Mall, London, our hero Phineas Fogg made a bet with a group of other members of the club that he would make a trip around the world in only 80 days. Now, in modern times, when we have an artificial moon traveling around the world in only a little over an hour, why, 80 days sounds like a long time. But in those days, 1872, it was almost impossible to travel around the world in 80 days. Almost, but not quite. And so, having bet 20,000 pounds or almost $100,000, enough to buy 1,000,000 double-scoop ice cream cones, the amazing Mr. Fogg was off on his trip around the world. First stop, Paris. Paris was an overnight trip from London, and barely an hour and 10 minutes after Fogg and Passepartout had arrived in Paris, they were off to Turin. And hard after them now was a detective who believed that Fogg was a bank robber who had recently robbed the Bank of England. And what a trip they had! From Turin to Brindisi, where they caught the steamship Mongolia, and thence to Suez, where 158 and 1/2 hours after leaving London, the two travelers, with Fix the detective hard behind them, were safely in Egypt. And shortly thereafter, they were off again, aboard the Mongolia and into the Red Sea. Next stop, Bombay. In Bombay, poor Passepartout had trouble with 3 natives, and it was only by showing well in a fight and running as fast as he could that he managed to join Fogg on the train to Calcutta. And that night, the train suddenly stopped, and all passengers were asked to detrain. It seems that the tracks just ended, and passengers had to make their way as best they could. So, never even showing that he was disappointed, Fogg calmly hired an elephant and off they went, riding the elephant through the countryside. While riding the elephant, they came upon a group of natives who were going to sacrifice a beautiful girl. And Passepartout, who besides being fast was very clever and brave, risked his life and saved her. And so now our party had another traveler, Fogg, Passepartout, and the beautiful Indian girl, Aouda. On to Calcutta, and thence by steamer Rangoon to Hong Kong, with Fix hard behind. In Calcutta, Fix tricked Fogg into missing the Carnatic, a ship which would have taken him to Yokohama, Japan. So Fogg hired a pilot boat, and in a jiffy he was off. Fogg caught up to the Carnatic at Shanghai and continued to Yokohama aboard that ship. From Japan, they shipped aboard the General Grant for San Francisco and thence across the United States, with many misadventures and much excitement. With Fix hard behind, the group traveled to New York. It took the burning of half of the ship that Fogg traveled on out of New York to give them enough fuel to get to England. And even then, it seemed that they had arrived a day late. But, miracle of miracles, Fog had neglected to take into account that he had been traveling in the same direction as the sun and had saved a day. And at the last possible moment, he walked into his club and claimed himself the winner of his bet, and also, incidentally, winner of lovely Aouda's heart.